So I finished watching Invincible a while ago, and when I think about this show, I realise how many protagonists fit the trope that Mark or Invincible fits into. When you look at your Spider-Mans, your Supermans, your Captain Americas, and all these other, white knight, incorruptible good guys, I always end up with the same thoughts in my mind. These guys are boring. I'm not sure if I'm the only person who thinks this, or maybe this is a thought everyone has in the back of their minds. But when I watch these characters just consistently making these selfless decisions and doing everything they can for all the people around them all the time and taking the weight of the world on their shoulders, I just find it tedious. Call me a pessimist, but I just fail to see a world where these characters would ever exist. Now I know people can't fly or climb or punch holes through a human chest, but I always try and relate these stories to how they would play out in a real world that I understand. Very rarely, if ever, do you find a person in the real world with a set of morals this strict. Everyone compromises themselves occasionally. That's fine, provided there's no significant harm that comes from it. We're all human, we make mistakes, and sometimes we have to set our beliefs aside for the sake of progress or common ground. When I see these heroes who always save the day and help everyone constantly and no one ever gets hurt, and I just feel a sense of indifference. What especially bothers me is how these characters always display a sense of guilt at any time anything bad happens and blame themselves for it. No one in their position of power would or should really feel guilty for the acts of other people that they have nothing to do with. Like if some guy I went to school with commits a horrendous crime, I'm not going to stay up all night feeling responsible even when I did nothing wrong to this person. I just interacted with them a couple times. It just feels so forced. Like when Mark feels guilty for powerplex when he accidentally kills his own family. Like no, he set it up, he put them in that position, and he escalated things to the point where that happens. That is entirely his fault. I get having compassion for someone who clearly has some issues, but taking the responsibility for their deaths or the story around his origin is just stupid. Mark never does anything wrong in the whole show, literally never sets a foot wrong. Every single act he commits is completely morally justified, even his more ambiguous ones. His, killing of Angstrom Levy, all of these things are justified. Same with Spider-Man and Superman. Yeah, there will always be people who hate you because you're powerful and famous, but to feel guilty for always doing the objectively right thing just isn't believable to me. That's why I've always admired characters that are a bit darker, like Batman or the Punisher, or even someone like Deadpool. Not just because they have less powers, but also because their actions are more human. They get angry and vindictive, they lash out, and they make choices that people around them don't always agree with. Take The Dark Knight, for example, a film that I will bring up at every opportunity. Throughout this film, Bruce Wayne consistently seeks guidance from Alfred on what to do, and he ultimately decides to do things that could be considered reckless or selfish and straight up illegal. And at the end of the film, he does end up compromising his moral compass. And that's real. He's still a hero because he stands for something more than himself, and he does something that is ultimately right, but also could have been avoided because he stands for something more than just himself. And we see that when he saves the Joker's life. But he's willing to break boundaries most people wouldn't to achieve that goal. People are complicated, and sometimes it's more enjoyable to see people deliberate the ethics and morality of their actions rather than just seeing the actions we all expect. People want to watch people overcome struggle. And it doesn't have to be a physical struggle, Spider-Man has been such an icon for so long. Not because he beats strong villains. He's easily stronger than everyone he fights in his movies, but he has to struggle to overcome personal stuff. It's just a shame there's no compromission to him. He's always right. He's always a hero. He's never really picked a decision that's wrong or even close to being wrong or ambiguous. It's always the objective right choice. And it's fine for a while when you're just objectively doing the right thing all the time. But it does get predictable, because then in every strenuous situation he finds himself in, we already know that everything will be alright. Not just because he's more powerful, but because he always does what's right for everyone. He'll save and help everyone, even the villain, all the time. There's never any jeopardy. That's boring. I want to be in a position where I don't know where he saves everyone. I want to be in a position where sometimes he lets bad things happen to good people for the sake of something else. As a hero story can only exist amidst conflict, and conflict only works if we as the viewers believe in some form of risk. And when it's shows like Invincible, where the guy always does everything right all the time, I just don't feel there's a level of risk, not a risk to harm, but a risk to oh my god, I really don't know what could happen here, because we already know what's going to happen. So I hope in the last season of Invincible we see a different side of Mark, like was teased at the end of last season. You know, I wanted to break rules, I wanted to take risks, right? That's what an interesting character does. They're not just one-dimensional ethically, they have multiple, there's layers to them, there's a darkness within them. I want him to be a bad guy who works to good ends. Who knows? I mean, that ultimately is a story that is compelling, you know, it's a character that's compelling, but whether that happens remains to be seen. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.